My beloved child, stop scrolling. Stay here for a moment. What you are about to hear was meant to find you at a strange and very specific moment, because somewhere beyond what you can see, someone has just made a decision that could change the entire direction of your story, and they did not tell anyone, not their closest friend, not their family, not the person they usually confide in. They kept it completely to themselves. But heaven saw it. I saw the moment they made the decision. I saw the hesitation before it. I saw the fear in their heart. I saw them sitting alone, staring into the distance, carrying a question they had been too afraid to answer, and then something inside them became still. They finally knew what they wanted to do about you, my beloved child. Pause here before you assume you already know what that decision was. It is not what you think. It is deeper than a simple message, bigger than saying, "I miss you." More serious than secretly checking your profile or remembering an old conversation. This was a decision about your place in their future, and they made it quietly, no announcement, no dramatic confession, no warning, just one private decision that they have not yet revealed to the world. Perhaps you have felt something shifting lately. Maybe you cannot explain it. Maybe you have suddenly started thinking about them again after a period of peace. Maybe their memory has returned at unusual moments, a song, a dream, a familiar place, a name appearing unexpectedly, a strange feeling that something unfinished is moving again. You may have tried to dismiss it. You may have told yourself that you were simply remembering the past. But what if there is another reason? What if while you were trying to understand why your heart suddenly became restless, they were going through their own private awakening? What if the distance between you has not been as emotionally quiet as it appeared, because while you were learning how to release control, they were learning what it means to lose control, and that lesson has changed them. There was a time when your soulmate believed they could simply put this connection away. They thought they could close the chapter. They thought enough time would make the feeling smaller. They thought staying busy would silence the questions. They thought meeting new people would make the memory of you less powerful. They were wrong. The heart does not always obey the plans of the mind. You can tell yourself 1,000 times that something is over, but if something remains unresolved inside you, the silence eventually becomes louder than the words. That is what happened to them. They reached a point where pretending became more exhausting than admitting the truth, and the truth was simple. They still cared, but even that was not the deepest truth. The deepest truth was that they had begun to imagine a future in which you were no longer part of their life, and for the first time, that future frightened them, not because they were afraid of being alone, because they were afraid of permanently losing you. That distinction changed everything, my beloved child. There is a difference between missing someone because you are lonely and recognizing someone's absence because they genuinely mattered. Your soulmate crossed that line. They began remembering the details, not merely the dramatic moments, the small ones, the way you reacted when you were excited, the expressions you made when you were trying not to laugh. The quiet conversations, the moments when neither of you needed to say anything, the little habits they once overlooked, the things they once considered ordinary, now those ordinary moments feel precious, and that realization has been painful, because they understand something now that they did not understand before. They were living inside a moment they thought would last forever, and they did not appreciate it until it became a memory. That regret has been following them. They have asked themselves questions they cannot answer. Why did I pull away? Why did I stay silent? Why did I let pride become more important than honesty? Why did I assume there would always be another chance? Why did I make them feel uncertain when all they wanted was reassurance? And perhaps the most painful question is the one they ask themselves late at night. What if they have finally moved on? That question has become real to them, because you are changing. They can feel it somehow. Maybe they saw a glimpse of your life. Maybe they heard something about you. Maybe they noticed that you no longer behave like the person who once waited for them. Maybe they simply sensed that your energy had changed. Whatever the reason, something became clear. You were no longer standing still, and suddenly, the person who once believed you would always be there realized they might actually lose their opportunity. That realization created urgency, but it also created fear, because approaching you means risking rejection, it means admitting mistakes, it means explaining the silence, it means answering questions they have avoided for a long time. It means becoming vulnerable in front of the one person whose opinion matters more than they want to admit. So instead of telling everyone what they were feeling, they went quiet. They started thinking, they started planning, and then, one evening, they made a decision, a private decision, a decision they have not announced. They decided they would no longer allow fear to make the choice for them. Read that again in your heart. They decided fear would no longer make the choice. That does not mean they are suddenly fearless. It means they are finally more afraid of losing you than they are of being vulnerable. That is a profound shift, because for a long time, their fear of rejection was stronger than their desire for connection. Now the balance has changed. Their heart is becoming louder, and something happened that made it impossible for them to ignore. They encountered a reminder of you at exactly the wrong moment, or perhaps exactly the right moment. They were already emotionally vulnerable. They were thinking about their life, about where they were going, about what they had achieved, about what was still missing, and then you entered their mind. Not as a fantasy, as a question. What would my life look like if I had not walked away? That question stayed. They tried to push it aside. They couldn't. Then another question appeared. What would happen if I actually went back? That was the moment something changed, because they did not merely wonder, they began imagining it. They imagined seeing you again. They imagined the first few seconds, the awkward silence, the nervous smile, the things they would want to say, the things they would be afraid to say. They imagined whether you would forgive them, whether you would trust them, whether you would even want them anymore. And then they imagined the possibility that you might look at them without anger. That possibility broke something open inside them, because they realized they were not only afraid of your rejection, they were afraid of your forgiveness. Forgiveness would mean they could no longer hide behind the excuse that the past was too complicated. Forgiveness would force them to become honest, and honesty is exactly what this person has been avoiding. My beloved child, your soulmate has been living between two identities. the person everyone believes they are, and the person they become when they are alone with their thoughts. Everyone sees one version: confident, busy, fine, moving forward. But there is another version, the one who sometimes wonders whether they made the biggest emotional mistake of their life. The one who remembers you when nobody is watching, the one who occasionally types something and deletes it, the one who opens old memories and closes them quickly because the emotion is too strong, the one who tells themselves they are over it and then realizes they are not. That person made the decision, not the confident version, not the proud version, the honest version, and their decision was not simply to contact you. It was to stop pretending that you do not matter. That is where the story becomes much deeper, because once someone stops lying to themselves, their external choices begin to change. They begin clearing emotional space. They begin questioning old attachments. They begin reconsidering plans. They begin looking at their future differently. And your soulmate has started doing exactly that. They have been quietly reviewing their life. Some relationships no longer feel right. Some habits no longer satisfy them. Some ambitions no longer seem as important. Some things they once chased now feel empty, because something has awakened, the desire for a life that feels emotionally true. And when they imagine that life, your presence keeps appearing. Not because you are the only possible person in the world, but because you represent something they associate with authenticity. You knew a version of them that existed before the masks. You saw their softness, you saw their uncertainty, you saw the side they rarely showed, and that memory has become increasingly difficult for them to replace. But there is a warning inside this message: my beloved child, do not mistake someone's realization for your responsibility. You are not required to rescue them. You are not required to wait. You are not required to stop your life because someone is finally understanding what they lost. Their awakening belongs to them. Your healing belongs to you. They must participate in creating it. You cannot do both sides of the work. You cannot carry their courage for them. You cannot make the apology for them. You cannot send the message for them. You cannot force them to become ready. And this is precisely why their secret decision matters. Because for the first time, they have accepted that the next move must come from them. They know they cannot keep expecting the universe to somehow bring you back together while they remain passive. They know that if they want another chance, they must take a risk, and they have decided they are willing to take that risk, but they have not told anyone. Why? Because people around them have opinions. Some people told them to move on. Some people believe the relationship was too complicated. Some may have encouraged them to forget you. Some may not understand what they felt, and your soulmate knows that if they tell those people what they are considering, they may be talked out of it, so they have kept silent. They are protecting the decision until it becomes strong enough to survive other people's opinions. That is why this has remained hidden. It is still fragile, like a candle in the wind. One careless voice could make them doubt themselves again, so they are guarding it, quietly, carefully, almost secretly. And there is another reason. They are not completely sure how you will respond. They wonder whether you still have feelings. They wonder whether you would even answer. They wonder whether you have someone else. They wonder whether you have forgiven them. They wonder whether you remember them with warmth or only with pain. And those questions have been keeping them awake. But something happened recently that gave them courage. They discovered something about you. Not necessarily through a direct conversation. Perhaps through something small, a photograph, a mutual connection, a passing comment, a glimpse of your life, and what they saw surprised them. You were not broken, you were not waiting. You were not stuck, you were becoming, you were living, you were smiling again, and instead of making them forget you, it made them realize something. You had become the person they always hoped you would become, but now they were standing outside the life they once had access to. That realization hurt, yet it also inspired them, because they began thinking differently. Instead of asking, "How do I get them back?" they started asking, "How do I become worthy of being trusted again?" That is a completely different question, and it is the question that signals real change. They know that if they return with the same behavior, you will eventually walk away again. They know they cannot offer temporary emotion. They must offer consistency. They must communicate. They must be willing to have difficult conversations. They must stop disappearing when things become uncomfortable. They must show you that they understand the damage caused by uncertainty. And they have been thinking about all of this, silently, deeply, perhaps more deeply than you would ever imagine. There is even a conversation they have rehearsed. They have imagined standing before you. They imagine your face. They imagine your eyes. They imagine you asking, "Why now?" And they have been trying to find an answer that does not sound like an excuse. Because I missed you is not enough. I was confused is not enough. I was scared is not enough. They know you deserve more, so they have been searching for the real answer. And the real answer is uncomfortable. They were not ready for the kind of love you offered. They wanted the feeling without the vulnerability. They wanted closeness without responsibility. They wanted certainty without having to reveal themselves. And eventually, life showed them the cost of that contradiction. They lost access to you. That loss became the lesson. Now they are beginning to understand what you were trying to tell them all along. Love is not proven by intensity. It is proven by presence, by consistency, by courage, by the willingness to remain when emotions become difficult. That lesson has changed them, but my beloved child, there is something even more significant happening. Your soulmate has made another decision, a decision about the future. They have decided that if they ever get the opportunity to speak to you again, they will tell you the truth, not the polished version, not the version designed to protect their image, the truth. They will tell you what they were afraid of. They will tell you why they disappeared. They will tell you what they regretted. They will tell you what they felt when they realized you were no longer waiting. And there is one confession they have never made, one sentence they have carried in silence, a sentence they have wanted to say but were too proud to speak. That sentence begins with, "I never actually stopped." And they have never finished it, not out loud, not to anyone, not even to themselves, but they know what comes next, and that is the part of this story that could change everything, because the decision they made was not simply to return, it was to tell the truth about why they never truly left emotionally. They have been carrying that confession for far too long, and now they are preparing to release it. But there is something standing between them and that moment, one final obstacle, one person, one circumstance, one piece of information they do not yet know, and when that information reaches them, they may have to make an even bigger decision. Because the path they are preparing to take toward you may force them to walk away from something they once believed they could never leave. That is why the decision has remained secret. They know that once they act, there will be consequences. They know people may question them. They know their life may change. They know they cannot return to the old version of themselves afterward, and yet they are considering it anyway. Because something inside them has finally become stronger than fear, their desire for truth, their desire for peace, their desire to know what could have happened if they had been brave, and perhaps most importantly, their desire to know whether the connection between you was truly finished. You have spent so much time wondering whether they still think about you, but the deeper question is not whether they remember. They do. The deeper question is what they are willing to do about what they remember, and that is where their secret decision becomes powerful. They have decided they will no longer let the past remain unfinished simply because they are afraid of the future. But before they can make their move, they need one answer. One answer only you can give. They need to know whether there is still a door, not whether you are waiting, not whether you are desperate, not whether you would immediately take them back, just whether there is enough openness for one honest conversation. They are terrified that the answer is no, and that fear has delayed them until tonight, because something happened tonight that they were not expecting. They saw something, they heard something, they remembered something, and suddenly, the decision they had been postponing became unavoidable. They reached for their phone, they opened your name, they stared at the screen, their finger hovered. For several seconds, they did nothing, then they began typing. They wrote one sentence, deleted it, wrote another, deleted that too. They put the phone down, picked it up again, and then, instead of sending anything, they did something far more significant. They opened a private note. And at the top of the page, they wrote your name. Underneath it, they wrote the words they have been afraid to admit. Not a message, not an apology, a decision, a promise to themselves. They wrote that if life gives them one more real opportunity with you, they will not run, they will not hide, they will not allow pride to speak first. They will tell you everything. And then, just as they finished writing it, their phone received a notification. They looked down, their expression changed, because the message was from someone they had not expected to hear from, someone connected to your story, someone who knew something about you, and the first sentence of that message contained information that could completely change the decision they had just made. They read it once, then again, and suddenly, all the courage they had gathered began colliding with a new fear, because the message suggested that you may already know the truth they have been hiding. They stared at the screen, their heart began racing, and then they whispered your name. For the first time, they understood that the next move could no longer be delayed, because what they discovered in that message was not merely about your past. It was about your present, and it revealed that while they had been secretly deciding whether to come back, you may have been standing at the edge of a completely different future, a future they never knew existed, a future that could make their decision meaningless. Unless they act now, and my beloved child, that is where the hidden story truly begins, because the decision your soulmate made in silence was only the first decision. The next one will determine whether the door between you remains closed, or whether, after all this time, someone finally finds the courage to open it.